Well, hello again. Thank you for joining me for this first in the tutorial for the sweater pattern. I think I'm going to have to name it, but until then, I just wanted to get us started here. So I've got the three colors that we're going to be working with. I have this pale rose, gray, and white. I have my hook. I have my notebook. I have a pen. I have my tape measure. I have some stitch markers. I have my darning needle. And I also have a pair of scissors. I'm going to put everything to the side because all we're going to need right now is our notebook. Okay? So, here's my notebook. The first thing I did, now remember, I'm going to be not only showing you how to do this, but to actually write this pattern down so that you yourselves can make this anytime you want, and you're going to start learning how to actually read patterns. So I've got on here my color, gray, rose, white, and the yarn that I'm using is Stylecraft Special DK. I would suggest you write down everything as well. You don't have to use the same yarn, but write down the yarns that you're using. I'm going to leave it like this, gray, white, and pale rose. And then once I finish one skein, I am going to put a tick mark, okay? Now, if you want, you can have an envelope maybe, and you can tape it to this paper somehow and then put your ball bands in it. You can do it that way. But just keep count of how many skeins of each you're going to be using. I also wrote down my hook. I'm using a Clover 6.5 millimeter. I think it's really important to write down both the size that you're using as well as which hook specifically, because I think you'll understand this when I say there are some whose shaft is slim like this, but then there are others, say like, now this is a huge hook, but do you see this is a Hobby Lobby hook, and it goes up, it like increases in size when it comes up to here. So we want to make sure that we're using the same hook throughout this one project, okay? So I have done my measurements, and if you will recall, I have written down, I had you write down, I'm going to draw right here, this is going to be my back panel, and I'm going to write this here like so, that this is 27 inches. That's how long I want that to be. Okay, I want from the shoulder down to where I want it to fall to be about 27 inches. All right, now what I'm going to do is, I had already played around with my yarn a little bit, and I suggest you just do that as well. You know, just if this is going to be your first wearable, you want to make sure you play around with it. There is absolutely no rush to do this. So I'm going to play around, and I'm going to start chaining and keep measuring as I go until I come up to about 27 yards. Okay, or 20 yards. No, 27 inches. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, I'm having to go extra super slow because I want to make sure I'm grabbing both loops. You know, see how it splits sometimes, so I'm going really slow. So I'm going to pause, and I'm going to keep going until I feel like it's the same length of 27 inches, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have chained 67 chains. Now, I want you to remember, don't be too tight on these. This is going to be our foundation row, and not foundation row, but our chain, our beginning chain, and we don't want it too tight. Okay, we don't want our stitches to be too tight, or it's going to be difficult to work with. Okay, just make it nice and loose, but not too awfully loose. Okay, so I have measured this out. I have 67 stitches, and I stretched it out. Okay, now let me just show you. This is how it normally just kind of lays. You see that? What I did is I stretched it out just a little bit, and I did the whole thing like that, and I measured it, and I came up with 27 inches. So I'm going to leave it like that, and I am going to now just start, because I know I'm going to give this I'm going to start in the third chain from the hook, but it's going to stretch out a little bit. So if it's not exactly 27 inches, I think we're going to be okay. So starting in the the third stitch from the hook, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to turn it over and catch the back loop. Now, this could be a little bit tricky for some, so I want to try to explain this. In crochet, you see there are 3, let me take this out and put a stitch marker in here, okay, so I won't lose the stitch. Okay, so in a stitch, there are 3 parts. There is this part, and there is, if you turn it slightly, there is that part. You see that? Let me do that again. So there's this part here on the back, and then there's 2 on the front. Okay? So what I want to do is, on my first stitch, okay, pretend like this is the hook here. So on the third from the hook, so that's 1, 2, 3, I'm going to turn it over, and look here. There's that bump. That's where I'm going to put my hook. Okay? So let me go back here, put my hook back in. And I'm going to go into that, I'm going to double crochet into it. Go into the bump and make a double crochet. There you go. See that? Now it's kind of like turning on its own. And now you can easily see all those bumps. See those bumps? That's what we're going to be going into. There you go. So no matter how many you have, you're going to start in the third chain from the hook, go to the back bump, and you're just going to double crochet in every one of those back loops. All right, so let's do a couple more. We're not even going to bother counting, okay? We don't even need to count, because this is all going to be the same stitch, all double crochet. And okay, there we go. Now see, when we come here at the beginning, do you see here? This is that first, you know how I said skip the first 3, third chain? So all that right there, that is actually the first stitch. How cool is that? So that's the first stitch. Then we have all these stitches here. You're going to go all the way across, working into the back bumps till you get to the very end. Okay, and I'll meet you back up at the end. Okay, are you still with me? Alright, so here we're coming up to the last couple stitches, and I am glad that I did a lot of that off camera because there might have been a little bit of frustration being expressed, because take a look. Yarn barf. Yeah, this is one of those cases that I really wish I would have caked it up before I started. Okay, so anyway, so we're coming up to the last couple stitches. Let's finish those up. Okay, now the last one, when we get to it, it might be a little bit tricky, but we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this together. All right. So right there is the last stitch. You see that? Turn it over, and right there. Pick it apart right there. Just make your last double crochet inside of that. All right, there we go. So right now I'm going to go ahead and take my stitch marker and put it in, because we're going to do something here. Okay, so here we go, our long first row. Thanks for sticking with me. Okay, so we're going to put this right up here for just a second, and now we're going to get out our notebook, because we need to work here. We got some work to do. So we have our first row, so we need to write down what we did. So we're going to write down chain, and you write down how many you chained, okay? So I'm going to write chain 67, because that's what I did. So you go ahead and in your notebook write down how many chains you did. Then you're going to write down double crochet, that's DC, in third chain from the hook. There you go. Double crochet in third chain from the hook. And here, let's make our own little I don't know, little thing here, because I don't know as if there is such a thing, but we're going to work in back bump. See, because we don't have a loop yet, okay? So we don't write back loop. We're working in back bump only. Now, if you need to remind yourself that you're going to double crochet in third chain from the hook, you can write back bump. You can do however you want. If you want to write back written it all out, but these are the normal abbreviations. DC, double crochet in third, CH is chain from the hook. Here's another chain, 67, okay? All right, so work in back bump only. I'm going to put that in parentheses, okay? So, row 1, double crochet in back bump of every chain across. All right, y'all following me so far? Okay. So now what I'm going to write under here is total, and now we're going to count our stitches, and we're going to write that number right here, total of ST for stitches. All right, so put that aside and take a minute to count all. Remember to count this as your first stitch. Okay, So you go ahead. I'm going to count quietly because I don't want to interrupt your counting. Okay, then come over here and write it in your, don't write this number, write whatever number you come up with, okay? Now remember, each one of us is going to have a completely different first row, okay? Whether it's a different color, different number of stitches, but everybody should have a row that looks something similar to this, okay? You're going to see a marled look if you're using 2 strands together. And you're going to have a nice thick row if you have a single color, a nice bulky weight, okay? All right, so that is it for this time around. Join me back here in just a little bit, and we're going to get started on the second round. All right, here we go on row 2. I want you to chain 2. Don't chain 3, chain 2, and turn your work. Okay? Now, that is going to count as your first double crochet. Now, crochet in a double crochet in the top of the next stitch and in each one across. All right, that's all we're going to do is double crochet in each stitch across. Nothing fancy. All right, so you go ahead and do that all the way across. I'll meet you back at the end. All right, we're closing in on the second row. Let's do the last couple stitches.